Wesley Clark said, "The truth about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it will be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa." Keep this in mind as we discuss today China's recent visit to Syria, Egypt, and Algeria, and what does it mean for the future geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. My name is Dr. David Oualaalou.
And my name is Dr. Ross Stewart.
And you are watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
We'd like to thank you for subscribing, and please do more of it. It helps us a whole lot.
Indeed, Ross. And we also wanted to thank our Patreon members for their continued support. And for you, if you like our videos and you want to show your support, consider subscribing to our Patreon membership. So once again, thank you all for your support. Back to our topic.
David, as you know, Wang Yi, the Chinese Foreign Minister, has just concluded a trip to the Middle East, Syria, Egypt, and Algeria. What do you make of this?
Yeah. Well, indeed, Ross. I mean, that was just a couple of days ago when he just concluded his trip to those three countries. Well, it's a very, very interesting in a sense that when you think of the Middle East, who do you think managing the affairs of the Middle East and from a global perspective?
The United
States. Not anymore.
They're on their way out.
Especially now with the United States announcing the complete withdrawal from Iraq. So the significance of this trip is big.
Yes, it is very big.
Yeah, but also this is not about just diplomacy or political posturing. It is also about economic opportunities. And what I found personally interesting, knowing that my academic background is on the Middle East, what I found very interesting about this, Ross, is that Mr. Wang started his trip with Syria first.
That is interesting.
Yeah. Well, do you know why it was Syria first? Because it came just a day after President Bashar al-Assad was re-elected as a president for the next 7 years.
What do you make of that? The timing.
Well, that's a big deal because China is demonstrating its support for Syria. Mind you, just for you to know that it was China that used its veto power in the UN Security Council to prevent any foreign military intervention in Syria.
Do you think that actually led to more or less peace in Syria?
Well, it's also because there are other factions behind the scenes pushing for that chaos.
Yes.
But China, I believe China's visit is not about political outcome and all. China doesn't care for that. What China's involvement in Syria is going to be is rebuilding the ravaged country. So it's from a business or infrastructure perspective.
How do you see this being a win-win for Syria and China? Because China's going to invest in infrastructure.
That is correct, and it's China's now, as a matter of fact, they did sign some agreements into how China's gonna take on the reconstruction of Syria. We're talking about major highways, we're talking about bridges, we're talking about infrastructure. I mean, those are not your small matters, but at the same time, there is a reason for all that. It's a win-win for Syria, a win-win for China, but China's thinking long-term, because Syria is strategically located. So you can just see the benefit for
the Belt and Road Initiative.
You're absolutely
opening up the Middle East, opening up Europe.
You're absolutely correct, Ross.
To Chinese products.
Yeah, and that is the key for it, because here are the things about Syria that you need to know, and all of us we need to understand. Syria plays a major role in the Middle East politics. Whatever happens, usually Syria has a role into that, one way or another. There are those who said at the time, I remember when the civil war started a decade or so plus ago. I remember I was talking to someone and I said, I bet you this war is not going to be over soon.
You were right.
Yeah. Well, the reason because of the not only the factions and the ethnicities within Syria. You're talking about the Alawites, the Druze, the Maronites, the Shiites, the Sunnis. I mean, it's a pot of so many, and that is why Syria always hold the key on certain aspects of political life cycle in the Middle East. But China is coming to Syria not from that perspective. China doesn't care. China's coming at it from a business perspective. That is the reason why.
You know, one of the things we discussed in an earlier video is China the ultimate peacemaker in the Middle East?
Well, apparently with this move, it's kind of, we all know, when the U.S. gets into a country that comes in with conditions and this and that, China does. China sits down and said, hey, do you want to do business? We'll be happy to do the infrastructure for you and all that stuff. In return, there are some agreement of sort. So, but they don't care for your ideology. They don't care for your religion. They don't care for your whatever. So that's just the way they approach it. And the West seems to have a hard time understanding this reality. That's how Chinese approach it.
You know, one of the things that, Wang Yi and Xi Jinping and the Chinese are saying is prosperity leads to peace. And we want peace to do good business. Yeah. And they say it over and over and over again.
That's correct. But also mind you that just for you to know the idea of the importance of the Middle East to China. From an energy perspective.
Oh boy.
As we said last time in one of our videos, China imports about 80% of its oil from different parts of the world, but mainly from the Middle East. And even from within the Middle East, they import it from Saudi Arabia, from Iran, from Iraq. I mean, you're talking about, because if it weren't for, like the quote said, if it weren't for oil, we're not going to be talking about the Middle East, basically. But this visit, for me, what it means, if I am to analyze it, it's a clear indication of the geopolitical shift taking place in the Middle East as the United States now trying to shift its attention to Asia. So China is coming in and filling in the vacuum there.
What do you make of the fact that Egypt was next on Wang Yi's list?
Well, that's very interesting. That's an interesting question, Ross. Why is that important? Because Egypt represents one of the sort of strong allies of the U.S. in the Middle East. You know, Egypt also because its location, the Red Sea and so forth, and the ties with the peace process that they had with Israel. So, but the importance about Egypt from a political perspective of the Mr. Wang visit is that it signifies that it's almost, and this is again my personal opinion, it's almost like China sending a message to the U.S. saying, hey, we can even get closer to you, close allies. Because that's what it means to me.
Right.
You know, and they already cut up they made some agreements between China and Egypt on cooperating on certain business sectors. You know, China is also supporting Egypt in the issue of the dam. I don't know if you're aware of the...
I'm actually not.
Yeah, well, there's an issue with the dam with Ethiopia and Sudan, and it's becoming a nightmare. So that could trigger a war, for that matter. So China is coming in with that idea of, yeah, we can support whatever. But the purpose of it, it's the idea of the cooperation between Egypt and China. Mind you that Egypt just celebrated the 65th anniversary of the ties with China as of last week. So what a coincidence, huh?
Yeah, really.
The timing of it. So I would say that the trip to Egypt was very, very strategically calculated. And rightly so. If China thinking in terms of expanding its presence through the infrastructure, but also because Egypt plays a role into the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative as well.
curious. Algeria, the last stop?
Oh, that's an interesting one. You don't hear much about Algeria. Well, what's interesting about this trip? I didn't see it coming first, and I'll admit it. So I didn't see it coming. But now it made more sense to me as to why. Well, the reason for it first is because Algeria is going to be also part of the BRI, but also China and Algeria came to an agreement to build a deep water port, in Hamdaniya, in an area called Hamdaniya, with access to the Mediterranean. It's a $3.3 billion. Both countries is going to be paying for it, not just China. Algeria is going to be contributing to that. Well, what's important about that port is that it will provide, routes to America. When I say America, the whole continent, to Africa and to Asia, going through around the Indian Ocean and so forth. So
this is really an important move. It's pretty well going on unnoticed.
Yeah, it is indeed. As a matter of fact, I have some stats here. If you allow me to just share with our viewers here. Well, for example, the estimate is that this port will handle about 6.5 million containers, and 26 million tons of goods annually. So you can just see why China decided, you know what? This makes perfect sense. It's a win-win. It's a win for Algeria, but it's also a win for China.
Doing a deep dive into Chinese history, we can certainly look at China has been this win-win philosophy, except sporadically when, but it's had this for centuries.
Yeah, and apparently they are sort of holding to that tradition, if I may use the term.
Yeah.
And it's working for them. So apparently they do that. So what's interesting about the case of Algeria, which it has not been reported openly in the West, and we wanted to share that with you, is that Algeria signed an agreement with Russia to purchase the S-400 missile system. I found it very, very interesting that a country like Algeria will go ahead and purchase a system like that is very advanced. And that's usually given the tensions between Algeria and Morocco over the desert, the Sahara Desert in the south of Morocco. You can just see that could trigger some tensions with Algeria having that kind of advanced weapons. Morocco is not going to be just sitting idle. They're going to have to figure out, okay, what is the intentions of those purchases are.
How serious is that threat?
It is and it isn't. I mean, they are, of course, Morocco, it's recognized through the UN that part of the territory is under Moroccan sovereignty. The locals are saying it is not. Algeria is saying not. So it's one of those
I got it.
those conflicts. But what's interesting about this is I was wondering, and I asked myself, how come China went to Algeria but not Morocco?
Yeah.
So I do not have the answer for that, but it was just one of those questions that made me think, okay, they chose Algeria for specific reasons. And that's where I personally found that the trip of Mr. Wang very, very interesting given how things are in the Middle East, the geopolitical landscape, and how the U.S. now is shifting its priority towards Asia. Basically, what it means to me is that the U.S. is confused from a foreign policy perspective.
I get it. So the geopolitical implication here is China has a plan, it's working, they're operating their plan, and the United States is leaving in a confused state.
That would be a fair assessment, Ross, because literally I do not see what the U.S. Is doing from a foreign policy perspective, dealing with the shifts that's taking place on the Middle East. I mean, it is happening whether we like it or not. It has been happening whether we like it or not. But hawks in Washington usually tends not to, as we always say in Washington. Washington will shoot the messenger if it does not like the message. So, and that's basically where I see it. Where I see it going is that China is focusing mainly on the business aspects to sort of bring those countries that in the Middle East. And this is not about just Syria, Egypt, and Algeria. You're talking about Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Lebanon, Turkey, you name it. It's not just one country. So it's an indication for the U.S. Hegemonic status that it was once back in the 70s is no longer.
Well, we're seeing it disappear before our very eyes.
Exactly, and mind you, as we said, just to remind you, one of the purpose and the reasons for why China is moving into that direction is to secure access to oil. It's because 80% when your economy depends on that, that's a big deal. You're gonna have, you're gonna have to make sure to secure your sources of energy from different parts of the world, just in case. What I do believe is that China's doing is China does not want to depend on one source. For example, Iran or Saudi Arabia or Iraq or whatever, or whomever. It does not want to do that, which is the right approach.
Absolutely right.
If we are to advise a company, we're going to say, hey, don't put all your eggs in one basket, because it just doesn't make sense.
Of all the complications here, what would you say the number one takeaway for our viewers is?
Well, this one, Ross, is a clear indication of how the U.S. global leadership, mainly in the Middle East, is declining faster than we are admitting. So, and to me, this was very, whoever thought that China is going to go to Syria and Egypt and Algeria? Yeah, and I mean, if you ask me 10 years ago, I'll say, well, yes, they will have diplomatic relations, but that's about it.
You know, I was absolutely surprised when we started getting the information of China's involvement in the Middle East. I couldn't imagine it.
Yeah, and it is expanding.
Yeah, clearly.
It is expanding. So this is not about with just one country. It is expanding. You remember when we did the video about China and Iran agreeing to the $400
billion. Oh, boy.
That's a big deal. That is a big deal. But also because Iran wants to use that as leverage against the United States. It's because they're seeing that, hey, we may as well cooperate with China and work with China than worrying about the U.S.
Well, the sanctions against Iran were crippling, and now they've turned east.
That's correct.
What a surprise.
Yeah, and this is where certain countries kind of welcome the China because when China comes in, as we said earlier, when China comes in, it does not put conditions up front. There are no conditions, as a matter of fact. You know, you either want to do business or not.
Right.
That's how they're approaching it. So that's basically what I see in this, a clear indication of that geopolitical shift. It's almost like China is pulling the rug from under the U.S.
Maybe that's the bottom line here.
That's how I see it.
Don't forget to like, share, and mostly subscribe to our channel. It really helps us in terms of viewership if you take the action of subscribing. Thank you for watching.
And as always, stay informed. Till next time. Bye-bye.